Classic African village stories. The man who silenced an entire village. One day, a stranger walked into our village and stopped a violent fight with just one sentence. No one understood how he did it. But that night, something terrifying happened. Everyone forgot what they had been fighting about. And that was only the beginning. Watch till the end to see how the truth was uncovered. My name is Tabena. And I am the only man in this village who remembers everything. I remember the day Okeke arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, dry season, when the red dust sits on everything and tempers run short like firewood before rain. Two men, Dyke and Uchenna, were already at each other's throats near the market square. Voices raised. Chest to chest. The whole village gathered around them the way people gather around fire, curious and hungry for heat. Then Okeke walked in from the eastern road. Quietly. No luggage. No greeting. He simply stood at the edge of the crowd, looked at the two men, and said 4 words. Just 4 words. I could not even hear them clearly from where I stood. But Dyke and Uchenna both stopped. They stepped back. They looked at each other strangely. Then they walked away in opposite directions. The crowd stood in confused silence. I stood there the longest. Because something about those 4 words disturbed me in a way I could not yet name. Nobody knew where Okeke came from. He did not arrive with a bag. He did not arrive with a name that anyone recognized. He did not mention a hometown, a father's compound, or a mother's village. He simply appeared, the way a strange bird appears on your rooftop one morning. Present, calm, and giving nothing away. By the second day, he was already fetching water for old Mama Ugochi, whose knees had stopped cooperating with her years ago. By the third day, he was fixing the broken fence behind the church with quiet, steady hands. He listened carefully when elders spoke. He never interrupted. He never pushed himself forward. He simply helped. And when he did speak, his voice was low and even, like water finding its level. People said he was a good man. I said nothing. I only watched. Because something about a man who arrives from nowhere and immediately begins doing good things without asking for anything in return, that kind of man deserves watching. Within 2 weeks, something strange began to happen in the village. Arguments that normally lasted 3 days began ending in one afternoon. Ismadu and his neighbor Chukwamika had been fighting over a shared wall for 6 years. 6 years of malice, of loud insults, of children forbidden from playing together. Then one evening, after Okeke sat quietly at the edge of their compound during a meeting, both men shook hands. Nobody could explain it properly. People said they had finally matured. Others said God was moving. The elders nodded and praised the harmony. But I noticed something the others did not notice. Sometimes arguments ended in compounds where Okeke had not visited. In places where he had only passed by on his way somewhere else. And yet the conflict still dissolved. As if something he carried in the air around him was spreading. Like smoke. Like a slow, quiet fire that leaves no ash. Life in the village became noticeably easier. I will not pretend it was not pleasant at first. Meetings that once stretched past midnight now ended before the sun fully disappeared. Neighbors who once competed bitterly over small things began cooperating. Men who once stood at the village square pointing fingers at each other now sat and shared coconut. The elders were deeply pleased. Old Papa Ikena, the oldest man in the village, sat under his mango tree one evening and said, "This is the peace our fathers prayed for and never tasted." People agreed. They smiled. But then I noticed something that wiped my own smile completely away. A woman named Adiz accepted blame for a quarrel with her sister-in-law. I knew Adiz. I had known her since we were children. She was stubborn the way hard ground is stubborn. You do not move Adiz unless she wants to be moved. But she accepted blame for something. I personally witnessed her sister-in-law start. And when I looked at Adiz's eyes, there was no anger fighting inside them. No swallowed pride. Just a strange, smooth calm. Like still water. Too still. Okeke himself began to notice it too. I could tell because he started becoming careful. Where before he spoke in small, quiet sentences, now he sometimes caught himself mid-sentence and stopped. He would pause. Choose a different word. Soften something. Rephrase. I watched this happen 3 times in 1 week. Once at a meeting where 2 men argued about borrowed money. Okeke opened his mouth, then closed it, then spoke something simpler and shorter than what he had clearly prepared to say. The argument still ended. Quickly. But Okeke sat afterwards with his hands on his knees, staring at the ground the way a man stares when he is counting the weight of something. I sat near him that evening. I did not speak. I only observed. And I realized something that made my skin feel cold. Okeke was not just speaking to people. Something in his voice or his manner was settling into people like a root into soft ground. And he was beginning to understand what that meant. And it was beginning to frighten him. By the 6th week, the change in the village was impossible to ignore. Meetings became short. Disagreements became rare. The village square, which once buzzed loudly with debate and counter-argument and passionate voices, now felt like a calm river. Leaders praised Okeke openly. Chief Obi called him a gift. The church deacon said he was sent by God. Even the women's group, which was normally the loudest voice of protest in any village decision, began agreeing with proposals quickly. Too quickly. Then one Thursday morning, a decision was made at the village meeting. A serious decision. A new road was to be built. And that road would cut directly through 4 families' farmland. Those 4 families would lose a full season of harvest. Everyone in the meeting knew this. I saw it in their eyes, the flash of worry, the beginning of objection. But no one spoke. Not one word of protest. The decision passed in silence. And the 4 affected families simply nodded. I looked at Okeke. He was not even speaking. He was simply sitting there, present. And that was enough. I decided to test what I was seeing. The following week, I deliberately started an argument at the village square. It was not a dishonest argument. I raised a real concern about the way money from the community fund was being used. It was a legitimate complaint. Other men had whispered the same concern to me in private. So I raised it loudly and clearly the way a man should raise things that matter. At first, 2 men nodded. I saw agreement forming in their eyes. Then Okeke, who was sitting 3 benches away, slowly turned his head toward us. He said nothing. He simply turned and looked. And the 2 men who were nodding stopped nodding. Their eyes changed. Not with anger. Not with disagreement. Simply with a kind of smooth blankness. Like a lamp turning low. The argument dissolved before it became anything. People looked at me the way you look at a man who is speaking a language no one else understands. A cold feeling moved through my chest. Not anger. Fear. Because for the first time, I understood that what was happening was not natural. And I was possibly the only one who could see it clearly. The village leaders adored Okeke by now. He was invited to every meeting. He was consulted before major decisions. Chief Obi gave him a seat near the front, a seat normally reserved for titled men. People brought him food without being asked. Women sent their children to greet him respectfully. He had become the quiet center of everything without ever asking for any of it. I went to Chief Obi one afternoon. I sat with him respectfully, greeted him properly, and then said carefully that I had observed something in the village that concerned me. That people were losing the will to disagree. That even when things were clearly wrong, no one was objecting anymore. Chief Obi listened politely. Then he smiled the way adults smile at children who have said something innocent but incorrect. "Tabena," he said, "you are too sensitive. What you call losing the will to disagree, I call maturity. I call progress. Not everything needs to be a fight." He patted my shoulder. He dismissed me. And I walked out of his compound feeling more alone than I had ever felt inside a crowd. That night, I followed Okeke. I am not a man who follows people in darkness. I want to say that clearly. But what I had seen in the meeting that afternoon left me no peace. So when Okeke left the village square after evening prayers and walked toward the old cashew orchard at the edge of the village, I followed at a careful distance. He sat on a flat stone between two trees. He sat very still for a long time. I crouched behind a wide trunk and watched. Then he began whispering. Very quietly. I could not hear individual words. But I could hear the rhythm of it, the same sentence repeated several times, the way a person prays when they are asking for something urgently. He was not speaking to anyone present. He was whispering into the air around him. And as he whispered, he pressed both palms flat against the earth. His shoulders carried the look of a man lifting something very heavy in complete silence. I stayed until he stopped. He sat quietly for a moment afterward. Then he looked up at the sky, and something I will never forget, his face, in that moment, was not peaceful. It was the face of a man who was very, very tired. People began waiting for Okeke before they acted. Stay with this story until the very end, because what happened next shocked the entire village. In part 2, you will see how Okeke slowly gained influence over everyone, even the chief himself. No one understood how one quiet man could control the decisions of a whole community. The truth behind his power will leave you questioning everything. Part 2 is dropping soon on this channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it when it arrives. And before you go, tell us in the comments, if you were living in this village, would you follow Okeke, or would you challenge him?